أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين، لا سيما بقية الله في العالمين، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I would like to express my gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving me this opportunity, alhamdulillah, to be in Madrasa Zahra, and inshallah have 3 lectures on the concepts of modesty and chastity, inshallah. So inshallah, the concept that we are going to talk about in Arabic and in Islamic terminology, the Quran and the narrations, it is called al-haya, and which is somehow different from al-iffa, and inshallah we'll discuss about these 2 concepts as much as time allows me, inshallah. And of course, all of us, we know about these 2 concepts, about haya, about the iffa, but maybe from time to time we just need to be reminded, as the Quran says, فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرْ. So I'm just trying to, inshallah, recite some verses and read some narrations which tell us about the significance of the concept of haya first, inshallah. So, we know that the time and era where we are living, technically it might be called modernity or even postmodernism, which compared to the past, many things have been changing, and each and every one of us, we see it within our family, where we have our children. When we see our children coming back from the schools, people going to their offices, workplaces. So when it comes to the concept of haya, I will translate it and define it, of course. Many things have changed compared to the past. And it is because of so many reasons, like, for example, nowadays people have access to social media, different satellites, and it has caused people to pay less attention to the significance of the concept of haya, and that is why I thought that it would be beneficial, inshallah, to review the verses and the narrations about the concept of haya. And according to some researchers done by the scholars, one of the main reasons for many moral vices is the lack of haya. So usually iffa is translated into chastity, and haya is translated into modesty and shame. So when we refer to the Quran and the narrations, haya is a kind of shame, but regarding whom, inshallah, I will explain. Meaning that when it comes to doing some indecent actions, which can be of many different types, we need to feel a kind of shame to do that action. Okay, this is what we are calling haya. So for example, when it comes, for example, to watching some movies, for example, okay, and if they are not appropriate, so I feel this feeling of haya, this feeling of shame or modesty. So to, for example, watch that movie, okay? So if I feel that, this is called haya. But there might be a confusion here sometimes, so let's translate haya as a kind of shame, modesty and shame. And but sometimes we confuse this concept with a negative kind of embarrassment and feeling ashamed. And in the narrations, we are told that there are 2 kinds of haya. So sometimes this feeling ashamed and embarrassed is coming from what they call it the inferiority of the self, or they call it psychological passivity. So, for example, the Holy Prophet ﷺ is quoted as saying, there are two kinds of haya. So a kind of haya is coming from intellect, and one type of haya is coming from ignorance. Also, Imam Sadiq says, one type of haya is coming from your weakness, and the other type of haya is coming from your power. So, first of all, I would like to quickly talk about the negative kind of haya. I mean, in some cases, we should not feel ashamed. This feeling of shame should not be there. Imam Ali says, "Man istahya min qawl al-haq, fahuwa al-ahmaq." If you are trying to tell the truth, but you feel embarrassed, you feel shy to say that, then you are an ignorant person. There are some types of haya which are, reproached and condemned in the narrations. For example, haya for acquiring knowledge. So sometimes I may say that, it's not good for me. For example, I'm a physician. I feel ashamed to go to a class where there are other people who are not at the same level of knowledge as me. So I feel ashamed. So when it comes to acquiring knowledge, there should not be any kind of shame. Or for example, I'm too old, I'm too young. The other narration referred to the negative haya. It's where we are going to mention that we do not know something. So many of us may be asked different questions about even the expertise that we have. So people expect you to know something. And in many cases, we do not know the answer. But because of the fact that people have referred to me and they expect me to answer, I feel shy not to answer. Okay? I feel shy to say I do not know. I feel ashamed to refer to my ignorance. So this is also, blame in the narration, especially when it comes to people like you, people who have studied in Hausa for some years, and some people come to you and ask you maybe a simple question about Islamic laws, for example. So I may tell myself that, okay, I'm wearing this clothes, so I've been in Hausa for many years. Now if I say I do not know, I would be embarrassed. But the narration tells us that no, just say I don't know. There is no haya when it comes to saying I don't know if you do not know. Especially I'm telling that when it comes to religious knowledge, maybe you say something and you are not, it's not possible to meet that person anymore. Sometimes it is, only a passing person, okay? And that is the second case where we shouldn't feel ashamed of saying I don't know. When it comes to consultation, let me quickly pass this part. When it comes to giving charity, the narration tells us that do not feel ashamed, do not practice haya when it comes to paying charity. If it is, for example, 500 shilling or no. As a person, people expect me to give, 10,000 shillings. No, pay charity as much as, you may have. To accompany the poor people, and this may be very much applicable in countries like Tanzania, where we have poor people coming to your house as helpers, as you call it, dada. And sometimes we may feel ashamed of sitting with them, eating with them, talking to them as if we are the lords and we are the slaves, na'udhu billah. So this kind of feeling ashamed to be with the poor people, it is also reproached in the narrations. To feel ashamed of having a simple life, to serve the guests. If you feel ashamed of serving your guests, according to the narration, this is not a good feeling. Respecting your parents. The narrations tell us that there is no shame in respecting your parents. If you feel haya, if you feel ashamed because of respecting your family, it can be in different ways, then there is no shame regarding respecting your family. So, having said that, we are going to talk about what we mean in these series of lectures about the concept of haya. As I mentioned, we need to have this feeling of shame when it comes to thinking of indecent actions or doing indecent actions, and it can have different examples. Inshallah, I will explain the examples. So how can we distinguish between the positive shame and the negative shame? For example, I told you the example of looking. So when it comes to looking at pictures, videos and everything, I'm telling you as people who are going to educate other people, of course. Or for example, when it comes to, listening to something, be it music or otherwise. Or for example, when it comes to wearing a type of clothes and so on and so forth. So in all these cases, we can think of the concept of haya. So we can, to make it more applicable, because I will read the verses and the narrations according to which whatever we are doing is seen by God, of course. Alam ya'lam bi anna Allah yara. This is very clear. And the Prophet, we have the concept of aradatul a'mal. Whatever we do is presented to the Prophet. Allah says, سَيَرَ اللَّهُ عَمَلَكُمْ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Whatever we do is presented to the Prophet. According to some narrations, for example, every Thursday or every Monday. We'll discuss that, inshallah. And then we have the Imam of the time, which we believe that whatever we do is presented to him as well. According to some narrations, every day and night. So if we want to recognize whether this feeling of shame is a positive one or negative one, we can think of the fact that imagine now Imam Zaman alayhi salam is next to me. So this is our belief that whatever we are doing is observed by the Imam, okay? Or at least will be presented to him at night, for example. So if sometimes we are confused whether this is a good shame or bad shame, the positive sense of haya or the negative one, we can think that, okay, right now I'm going to do this, looking, listening, wearing, and so on and so forth. So imagine Imam Zaman alayhi salam is next to me. Are you going to feel shamed for doing that action or not? If you feel ashamed of doing that, when you see Imam Zaman alayhi salam sitting next to you, then that is the positive haya. But for example, I'm going to do an-nahy anil munkar. This is, one of the obligations. And many of us may feel ashamed for going to a person and telling him or her not to do a bad action. We feel embarrassed. But imagine Imam Zaman is next to you and you're telling Imam that I'm going to go to him or go to her and do an-nahy anil munkar, but I feel ashamed. I feel embarrassed. Will Imam Mahdi alayhi salam accept that? No. Imam would tell you that, this is your obligation. So, based on this, if we can practice and come to this conclusion that for sure whatever we do is observed by foremost Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, and of course the Prophet. Then we can conclude, we can distinguish whether this is the good concept of haya or not. So the other point that I would like to mention before going to the verses and the narrations is that wearing hijab, a complete hijab, means that we are acting upon haya as well. Is there any relation between haya and wearing complete hijab, like you, for example? The answer is not necessarily. Okay, so wearing hijab in and of itself is an act of haya. Okay, so that is for sure. So those people who do not practice hijab, they lack this certain of haya. Okay, but does it mean that when we are hijabi people, when we have complete hijab and we act upon the obligation of hijab, then we are also with haya, with shame in all the levels? Not necessarily. Okay, we have one level of haya for practicing hijab, but we may lack other levels of haya for not practicing upon this shame, for other issues. For example, one of the examples for haya which is mentioned in the narrations is when we are talking. Okay, we have haya in our words, in our speech. So it's possible at least for us to practice hijab, but not to practice haya when it comes to talking to your spouse, your children, to your friends. It might happen that you may use bad words, or foul language, for example. So this can be one example. The other case might be that we may practice hijab, in front of non-mahram, but when it comes to our maharim, we may not practice haya. And unfortunately, in our time and era, sometimes the religious people, they may ignore this fact, especially those who have boys in their houses. So wearing hijab outside is an obligation, but wearing proper clothes in front of maharim is another issue. Sometimes it might not be prohibited. The type of wearing, the type of clothes is legal based on the Islamic laws, but it might not be based on haya, based on this concept of shame. We might be, Muslims might be practicing hijab, but we may not have haya when it comes to listening. Again, I'm not talking to you, as examples. This is what's happening in many communities back in Iran. I have experienced a lot. People, good people, religious people, they are practicing hijab, but when it comes to, for example, listening to music, they do not care that much. So when it comes to haya, feeling ashamed before God, before the imams, they may not have the proper feeling of shame. Talking to non-mahrams, we know that, of course, I may again, emphasize that the time and era is very much different from the past. So if I have time later, I will explain that sometimes some actions were not considered as, non-practicing haya in the past, but it might be so in our time and vice versa. So in the past, maybe 100 years ago, if as a religious lady you wanted to talk even to non-mahram, people may consider it as not acting upon haya. But in our time and era, this is not like this. If you talk to non-mahram, that's okay. Even based on the Islamic laws. But the point is that the way that we are going to talk with non-mahram, especially those people who go to universities, boys and girls, and those who go to workplaces. And this is happening a lot. I mean, on the first day, for example, women and men, I mean, they just talk very normally, which is of course logical, natural. But gradually they they begin to talk in a more friendly way. Gradually they may even joke and they laugh, and they may chat and talk to each other in a way that they may not chat with their spouses back to their houses. So this is happening in some of the religious communities that they are practicing hijab. But when it comes to going outside, coming to communicate with non-mahram, they may lack this feeling of shame in some places. And the maybe threatening point here is that haya is not going to be taken away from us altogether all at once. Okay? It happens in a very, very gradual process. I told you, I've seen, even among my relatives, that when they go to university, when they go to workplaces, boys and girls, so in the first days they even feel ashamed of going to non-mahram, talk to him or talk to her. It doesn't make any difference. But gradually they may come and talk about work, about education, again, very much normal. But day by day and gradually they feel a kind of, friendship. And they are losing that feeling of shame more and more and day by day. To the extent that, as I told you, you see sometimes people joking and chatting in a way that, even they may not do that with their mahrams. So this is a very threatening point. And Satan is very clever. On the first day, he is not coming to us to tell us that, okay, you may joke and chat in a very friendly way. No, it happens along the time. Or for example, when it comes to watching, especially we need to take care of our children. When it comes to watching movies and pictures and everything, for the first time that, for example, a child is going to watch a bad movie or picture, he or she may feel very ashamed, which means that haya is practicing. The next day, he or she may try it again, the next week, to the extent that after some months we come to see that there is no shame anymore. And this is very dangerous. We should not lose this feeling of being sensitive, and this is what is done by the Satan, and we need to practice for that. So when it comes to the concept of chastity, based on the verses and the narrations, we can think of 5 groups or 5 people or 5 category of beings who watch us and who should be and we need to take care of them when doing our actions. So the first category is the people. Okay, in many cases, if I feel that there are some people around me, I'm not going to I'm not going to commit a special sin because I see that people are watching me. So this is very crystal clear, and maybe the lowest level of haya is that you feel ashamed, you feel embarrassed to do a bad action in front of the people. But this is the lowest level of haya. Then we have, according to the narrations, we have ourselves. We need to feel ashamed before ourselves. Inshallah, I will explain. Okay? Even if there is no person, even if there is no God, even if there is no Imam Zaman, we need to have this feeling of haya and shame before ourselves. Inshallah, I will explain. We have God, of course. And then we have the angels, according to the Quran and the narrations. The angels can see our actions, and then the infallible imams and the prophet based on the narration. So we have these 5 categories: people, ourselves, God, angels, and the infallible imams. Imam Ali alayhi salam said, غاية الحياء أن يستحي الرجل من نفسه. The highest level of haya or shame is for us to feel ashamed before ourselves, and this is very difficult to achieve. Which means that it is as if there were no God, if the Imam were not able to visit our actions and see our actions. Imagine Imam Zaman is not able to see our actions, okay? But we need to be so, let's say, confirmed in our practicing haya that even if there is no God, even if there is no angel, even if there is no Imam, we need to feel ashamed of doing indecent actions. That is why Imam Ali salam said, غاية الحياء, the highest level of haya is for a person to feel ashamed before himself or herself. Also, Imam Ali salam says, أحسن الحياء, the best type of haya is استحياؤك من نفسك, to feel ashamed before yourself. There are some verses about the concept of haya in the Noble Book of Quran. Just I mentioned one of them, the haya, the shame of the daughters of Prophet Shu'aib alayhi salam is mentioned in chapter Qasas, verse 5. You know that when Prophet Musa alayhi salam comes to the land of Madian, he sees the daughters of Shu'aib alayhi salam, and then Prophet Musa alayhi salam tries to help them. And then one of the daughters, when she tells the story to her father, Prophet Shu'aib alayhi salam asks her to go to Musa alayhi salam and take her to the house of Prophet Shu'aib alayhi salam. So the Quran here said, فَجَاءَتْهُ إِحْدَاهُمَا تَمْشِي عَلَى اسْتِحْيَاءٍ. One of them approached Musa alayhi salam, and the way she was walking was based on haya. So you see how wide is the range of practicing haya. So we might practice hijab, but when it comes to walking, when it comes to wearing makeup, when it comes to other issues, we may not practice haya. So here the Quran says that even the way that she was walking, it was giving a signal that I'm a modest person. I'm practicing haya. Because I think, especially you as ladies, you can guess, and men also can guess, who is practicing haya and who is not practicing haya. Of course, wearing hijab in and of itself is a signal that I'm practicing haya. But back in my country, Iran, you may have some people wearing hijab, but they are giving signals that I'm not going to practice haya, and giving signals to the men, to approach them. So, just I wanted to recite this verse to tell you that even when we are going to walk, it can tell us whether we are practicing haya or not. فَجَاءَتْهُ إِحْدَاهُمَا تَمْشِي عَلَى اسْتِحْيَاءٍ. The rest of the story is not mentioned in the Quran, but the narrations tell us that when Musa alayhi salam wanted to go to the house of Shu'aib alayhi salam, he asked that daughter of Shu'aib that I walk in front of you and you come behind me and you tell me go straight, go to the left or to the side. Okay? Like a Google map in our time to tell you which side to go. So that was also a kind of haya practiced by Musa alayhi salam. He didn't want the daughter of Shu'aib to be in front of him. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family. So I'm now trying to share some narrations talking about the significance of haya. I'm sure that the concept of haya is now clear. So because of the fact that sometimes this is neglected, I'm trying to share some narrations to show the significance and importance of haya. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is quoted as saying, إِنَّ لِكُلِّ دِينٍ خُلُقًا وَخُلُقُ الْإِسْلَامِ الْحَيَاءُ. We have different religions. Each religion may be recognized by a character, by a special temperament or manners. The manners, the temperament of my religion, that is the religion of Islam, is haya. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, Al-haya'u min al-iman. Haya is coming from your faith. Wal-imanu fil jannah. And iman, faith, is in paradise. Meaning that one of the requirements for going to heaven is having and practicing haya. As I mentioned, one of the points that we need to take care is the fact that whatever we do, in each and every moment is seen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alam ya'lam ba'anna Allah yara. Sometimes when you go to the houses of the great scholars, you see this verse written in front of them, put on a wall, for example, to remind themselves from time to time that whatever you are doing is watched by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alam ya'lam ba'anna Allah yara. So that should be enough for us. But some of us, because of the fact that unfortunately we may belittle God, we are told that okay, it's not only God. فَسَيَرَى اللَّهُ عَمَلَكُمْ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Your actions are seen by God, by the Prophet, and by the Imam of your time. So for some of us, if we know that God sees, we say that okay, God is okay, let Him see us. But if you're told that Imam Mahdi alayhi salam is watching us, for some of us it might be more, it might have more effect. So when it comes to God, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam says, خَفِ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى لِقُدْرَتِهِ عَلَيْكِ. Be fearful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, this fear, we know that is khashya, is different from what we call it khawf. It's the awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because of His power, وَاسْتَحْيِ مِنْهُ لِقُرْبِهِ مِنْكَ. And practice chastity because of the fact that He is close to you. This is mentioned in chapter of Qaf, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is closer to you than your jugular vein, which is a metaphor telling that whatever we are doing is seen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, الحياء والإيمان مقرونان في قرن فإذا ذهب أحدهما تبعه صاحبه. Haya, modesty, and iman, faith, are in the same string. If one of them goes, the other goes as well. This is one of the powerful narrations about the significance of haya. So Imam says that, if you neglect the concept of haya, in a long term, even you may lose your iman altogether. And if you have no iman, it may result in you losing haya as well. This part is clear. Many of the people who are not mu'min, who are not faithful, they may not have haya. But as believers, as mu'mineen, if we do not practice haya, this kind of shame before God, before our imam, before other people, and before ourselves, in a long term or even in mid-term, we may lose at least some levels of faith or iman. This very point, the correlation between haya and iman, between shame and faith, is mentioned in some other narrations as well. For example, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, La imana liman la haya'a lah. The person who lacks haya, there is no iman for him or her. Of course, he doesn't mean that he is not a believer, he is a disbeliever. No. He does not or she does not have the highest levels of faith. But the tone of the narration is very, powerful. La imana liman la haya'a lah. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is quoted as saying, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. إذا لم تستحي فأعمل ما شئت. If you do not have this feeling of haya or shame, then do whatever you want to do. Another narration telling us about the significance of haya. If you do not feel this kind of shame before God, Imam, people, yourself, angels, then do whatever you want. And let me end with the narration coming from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. We have heard about Tawheed al-Mufaddal. This is a lengthy narration mentioned by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam to one of his companions called Mufaddal. It is full of teachings. You can find it available in English as well. I think you can find it in the different websites like al-islam.org. It's, of great value at least to read this book. It's not a very large book. This is a narration but referring to many Islamic teachings known as Tawheed Mufaddal, like monotheism as taught by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam to his companion Mufaddal. Now, in one part of this narration, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, "Undur ya Mufaddal, look Mufaddal, ila ma khussa bihi al-insan duna jami' al-hayawan min hadha al-khalq." The human being has one characteristics, one feature, one trait that the other creatures, the other animals, they lack. A'ni al-haya. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says that this feature is the concept of haya, so we cannot expect the animals to practice haya. فَلَوْلَاهُ لَمْ يُقْرَ ضَيْفٌ. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam here is giving different examples of practicing haya. He says, if there is no haya, people would not serve their guests, so they will not feel ashamed. وَلَمْ يُوَفَّ بِالْعِدَاتِ. Sometimes we promise to do something, okay? Imam says that if there is no haya, people will not act upon their promises. وَلَمْ يَتَنَكَّبِ الْقَبِيحُ فِي شَيْءٍ مِنَ الْأَشْيَاءِ. And when it comes to any ugly action, any indecent action, people may do that if there is no haya. حتى أن كثيرا من الأمور المفترضة أيضا إنما يفعل للحياء. Many of the obligations that we do, it is because of the fact that we are practicing haya. We have this feeling of shame. فإن من الناس من لولا الحياء لم يرع حق والديه. There are some people that if they have no shame, no feeling of haya, even they will not respect their parents. Of course, respecting parents has, many levels and dimensions, but each and every one of us may lack one degree of that. And that is coming from lack of haya and shame, as mentioned by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. وَلَمْ يَسَلْ ذَا رَحِمٍ. If there is no haya, people may not keep ties with the relatives, the concept of silatul rahim. وَلَمْ يُؤَدِّ أَمَانَةً. People will not return the trusts which are given to them, entrusted to them. وَلَمْ يَعْفُ عَنْ فَاحِشَةٍ. When it comes to any indecent action, people may not refrain from that if there is no concept of haya or shame. So that was the kind of introduction to the topic of haya. I tried to define this word and how it is distinguished, this positive meaning of haya or shame before God, before other people, before the angels, before the imams, the imam of the time, and some examples for this concept. And based on some narrations, I try to refer to the significance of this concept And it would be very important for us, I believe, from time to time to review our actions. Because, as I mentioned, it may not happen all at once. You know the concept of muhasabatun nafs. So if you can do it on a daily basis, great. Or at least from, some time to time on a weekly basis, from 1 month to another month. Let's analyze our actions. Am I practicing haya or shame in all these aspects? Am I doing my actions as if I see the presence of God in my life? I feel the presence of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam in my life? So this needs practice, at least if not on a daily basis, from time to time. It would be great if you can think and review our actions, inshallah. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.